Good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order this council committee meeting for the city of Gallatin. It is April 11th, 2023, and the time is 6 p.m. I'm going to ask Ms. Danielle to call the roll for us, please.
Yes, ma'am. Vice Mayor Love.
Here.
Councilman Carter.
Present.
Councilman Fan.
Here.
Councilman Fennell is absent. Councilwoman George. Here. Councilman Hayes.
Present.
And Councilman Javance.
Present.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much. You do have minutes before you this evening. They are from the March 14th, 2023 meeting and the March 28th, 2023 council committee meeting.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion to approve by Councilwoman George, second by Vice Mayor Love. Are there any questions, additions, corrections requested? Okay, seeing no one, all in favor of approving both sets of minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no. It does pass unanimously. Both minutes are approved. We'll now move to public recognition. This is the time of the meeting where if anyone has anything to address with the council, because it is a work session, it happens only before the meeting. We ask that you come forward, you give us your name, your address. You'll have 5 minutes to speak, and public recognition is now open if you would like to come forward.
Good evening, great people. Gallatin is Mr. Reeners, 317 Malone Drive. And I brought up an issue last week, and I still want to go a little further. And it has to do a lot with the city as far as I got an email from Randy Lucas that included Pascal.
Point of order.
No names, please, Mr. Reeners.
Well, I know it isn't question and answer, but I hear people being accused of violating a planning service. I mean, isn't a city a corporation, a person kind of? So, I mean, is it when someone calls out the city, calling out a name? I mean, I get free speech still here. And it's the truth. And I mean,
You
we already got that
speech,
far.
But
Sorry.
our rules of order
All right, try to
are
follow your rules. Sorry.
not to put someone in a place of being disparaged.
Okay. So I believe if someone disparages themselves, they open the door, whoever it is, anywhere on the planet. So when I guess if the city gets involved with someone that just is putting itself out there where there's no threats. I've been accused of threats, stalking, yet there's no police reports. And in a couple of weeks, there's going to be a hearing where a lot of people are going to be involved and there's still going to be no threats. And there's going to be people involved that held signs that called the police on me for holding signs. So I just want to let the city know, again, it's quite embarrassing that a couple people want to embarrass the city, but I want to try to help the city. And I don't think that you guys should do any unduly burdensome publicity when you guys have respected my free speech. So I don't think anybody in a group should be punished for one person, but I think there's an issue where, people have been involved where it's going to come against my civil rights. And I think the city should know about that and try to help the citizens try to deal with it. If someone is breaking their oath to the office, to look into it and try to help the citizens out, because we shouldn't have anybody on the board that's breaking their oath to office. I mean, that's the most important thing, because you can't take the seat until you take your oath. So what importance is it? I mean, if you can't sit down at a seat before you say something and mean it, with your hand up, is it perjury? I mean, is it a seat that deserves to be sat in? I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to help the city out. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Reeners. Anyone else wishing to speak under public recognition tonight?
Good evening, everyone. Linda Ng, 225 Nichols Lane. Our town has a long-standing history, and it's important to remember and acknowledge the contributions made by those who came before us. And as we continue to grow and evolve as a community, it's our responsibility to ensure that we preserve our rural character and our environmental integrity. Today, I want to address the slave graves that are located on the Green property in South Central Gallatin. We don't know their names, we don't know their stories or their faces. We barely acknowledge, much less honor their contributions to building Gallatin. And I don't know of any other slave burial sites in Gallatin, and I grew up here. But the prosperity of Gallatin today is owed to their back-breaking labor of clearing forests, digging streams and ponds, planting and harvesting tobacco, corn, and cotton, and all of this done without gas engines and without electricity. You see, the place that is now known as the Green property was once a large plantation. The slaves that lived on that plantation buried their own dead on the property. They laid headstones that are now illegible, and they planted buttercups at each grave. The memorials were tended with love. At the end of the Civil War, the Sumner County government allotted several tracts of land to the freed slaves of that plantation on Peach Valley Road. The least we can do today is provide those slaves with a historical marker, recognition, and protection. While I appreciate the need for growth and progress, I cannot help but feel that our rural character is being sacrificed at an alarming rate, and this is causing great discomfort amongst many of our residents. The rapid development has resulted in increased light, noise, and air pollution, which is not only detrimental to our environment, but also affects the health and well-being of our citizens. The wildlife that once thrived in south central Gallatin is also being disrupted and displaced, and it's causing harm to their natural habitat. It's our responsibility to preserve this legacy for the future generations of our town. I understand that progress is necessary, but I urge you to consider the cost of development, and we need to find a way to balance progress with preserving the character of our rural environment. Our town is unique, and we must not let it become another faceless urban center that has lost its identity. So I implore you to consider the concerns of the citizens and ensure that their voices are honored. We need to work together to find a solution that will benefit everyone, and that includes preserving our local heritage, forests, and open lands. I strongly believe that the best contribution that the Kirkpatrick and Green families can make for the future would be to donate a portion of their land for the creation of a park that could be called perhaps Peach Valley Park. This park could include forested trails, a historical marker for the slave graves, peaceful open land, and wildlife habitat. This open space should not be the afterthought of a for-profit developer. I believe it should be steered by the people and by the government of Gallatin. The generations behind me will barely remember what open land is here, or even what wildlife looks like or sounds like, unless you act now. I speak alongside the majority of those people when I tell you we don't want crowded homes or shopping centers or concert venues. We want open space and wild land. We hope for a resolution from the City Council supporting these measures, standing up for the needs of our citizens past, present, and future. Let us not forget the contributions of those who came before us, and let's honor them by preserving their legacy for future generations. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Singh.
Good evening, Mayor Brown. Good evening, Council. My name is Michelle Juvance, 1335 Long Hollow Pike. I wanted to comment on the Plan Gallatin that's on the agenda. And a lot of time and energy and money was spent by a lot of people putting this plan together. And a lot of time and effort was spent gathering input from the community. Plan Gallatin along the way has become something that is a far cry from what the citizens said they wanted. And you are all elected to represent the citizens of Gallatin. So I wanted to read to you the comments from the community input to remind you what the citizens said they wanted. I have the compendium of community input, which was gathered between June 18 and July 31st of 2019. So I just wanted to give you a reminder of what the citizens said. But before I do that, one comment I wanted to make about something I noticed in the Plan Gallatin, especially now that the character area was changed to suburban along the Nichols Lane, or actually the Log 4 Road, that whole area. It was changed to suburban. If you look at it, the character area map is now red and orange and yellow. And there's no green. The green is like way out on the outskirts of the edges of the urban growth boundaries. So, like I said either last week or the week before, I think that the plan is incomplete because it's pushing for high density development and saying it's going to save green space by doing that, but until you actually have something in place that's actively preserving that green space while you're doing the high density, it will eventually turn into only high densities for as far as you can see. So what the people said they wanted, what is your favorite thing about Gallatin? The people are special. Small town feel, friendly. Small town feeling, close to the city. Current size and projected growth are good in my eyes. Proximity to metro. Small town feel still. Although Gallatin is growing by leaps and bounds, it still feels like a small town. Rural character close to Nashville. Living on the lake at Foxland Harbor as I could live on plain old dime anywhere. Lower property taxes than Illinois, people, culture, weather. Chamber is great. I moved to Gallatin for the green open spaces. I enjoy the small town feel and family environment. Friendly people. Small town feel with a safe feel. Proximity to Nashville. The quietness, the peacefulness. Not being a big city. 3 exclamation points. Convenience of stores minus the traffic problem. People are friendly. Friendly, great park system, outstanding police and fire department, great school system, great place to raise your family. Small town and active downtown, beautiful scenery, farms, ranches. The laid-back town. It's a small, friendly, accessible powers that seem to care about the city and populace. Old Town Square, historic homes and barns, scenic rural beauty, how pretty the view along Long Hollow Pike, friendly people, the lake, and the many historical places we have. Volunteer State Community College, our nearness to Bledsoe Creek State Park, our Greenway football team, our community pride. Greenway, restaurants, Square Fest, small town square, small town feel in the square, lake, community feeling, country feeling in a large town. People are friendly. Small country town, friendly people, quiet neighborhoods. The people and the way of life. Coming from New York City, people are nice. Amen. The attitudes of most people I meet, job relationship ratio. Quality and helpful attitudes of city employees. The square. My hometown tradition mixed with growth potential development. The square and the greenway. I like seeing the mayor so involved in the community events. The landscape, lake, parks, civic center, square, people, and so much more. The family feels still small enough to keep that feel, but growing so we don't feel stuck. Small town feel with perks, jobs, etc. of mid-sized town. The people are friendly, king, and caring. That must be a typo. Small town feel, government.
Thank you, Ms. Givenchy.
Yeah, you're welcome. So there's a lot here, but a lot of it talks about small town feel and rural, scenic. So just please remember that as you're looking at the Plan Gallatin.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak this evening under public recognition, you may do so at this time. Okay, seeing no one, I'll declare public recognition closed and move to mayor's comments. I do have a very special proclamation to present this evening, and so I'm going to ask the representatives from our Sumner County Emergency Communications Center to come forward to the podium. Y'all can stand out there if you'd like to, except Christy, I want her over here. Ladies and gentlemen, in case you didn't know, this is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And telecommunicators may be a word foreign to a lot of you, but think about when you have to call 911, who answers the phone, and hold your hand over the phone line when you're experiencing an emergency. These people work in very difficult circumstances and work with people at their very worst moments. And so we are proud to be able to honor them this week. Christy Davis is the director of the Sumner ECC. Remember, we became a consolidated dispatch, how many years ago now?
Almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years ago, and you've been the director for how long?
Just about a year.
Okay, and you want to introduce the folks that we have with us this evening?
So today we have Amy Simpson. She's our deputy director. Miss LaVon Brown. She is one of our night shift dispatchers. And Ken Smithers. He's our CAD administrator and also works the floor quite frequently.
And they work 12-hour shifts, answering calls day and night. I particularly admire those of you who work the overnights. So, and I know that you are appreciated by our law enforcement and by our fire department. They're waving and saying hello. So I'm going to read this proclamation, and then we will get a photo. Jeff can get one for us. I forgot to bring my phone. Perfect. Okay. So this says, whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas when emergency occurs, prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property, and whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Sumner County Emergency Communications Center, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters, monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety, and whereas public safety telecommunicators of the Gallatin community have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients, and whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year, I, Paige Brown, Mayor of the City of Gallatin, do hereby proclaim April 9th through 15th, 2023 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and our citizens safe. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for what you do every day. Now, let's give them another round of applause. They are amazing for all of us. And agencies and municipalities throughout the county are honoring them in different ways this week, and they will be having an event for their employees on this Saturday, so we're excited about that. I do have some events to share with you. Tomorrow is an organ donation flag raising ceremony at Sumner Regional. It starts at 10 a.m. The Market in the Park is this Friday and Saturday from 9 a.m. Well, it starts Friday 4 to 9 p.m. And then I guess it's Saturday also from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. The mobile food pantry at East Winchester is open from 9 to 11:30 this Saturday. The spring plant sale is at the Gallatin Farmers Market. And this Saturday night is the Green Wave dinner, steak dinner and auction at Gallatin High School. The 16th is the motorcycle swap meet and flea market at Triple Creek Park. On the 21st is Kevin Chopson's, our Gallatin Poet Laureate, if that name doesn't ring a bell with you. That is his Neo-Alt Pop-Up Dada/Fluxus Extravaganza. And he puts on performances at various places throughout Gallatin. This one will be at Big Trouble Brewing. It's from 7:30 to 9 on the 21st of April. On the 22nd, this is an important thing for you to know about, is the National Drug Take Back Day. Throughout the year, you have the opportunity to take your drugs to various drop boxes around the community, but this day is really to highlight the importance of properly disposing of any pharmaceuticals that you may have in your home so that the wrong people don't get hold of them, or someone winds up taking something that's dangerous for them, or by throwing them in the trash or flushing them down the toilet, they wind up in our water supply, which we don't want that either. So that happens on the 22nd. Also on the 22nd is the 50th anniversary celebration of Earth Day at Bledsoe Creek State Park from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. And I think that is going to conclude Mayor's comments and make us ready to move on to the regular agenda. And we'll have some items under other business. With this council's permission, I would like to move 3 items to the top so that some people may leave the meeting before we get into some of the longer items. I'd like to move items 2, 6, and 7 up to items 1, 2, and 3. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, well, we'll start then with item number 2, which is ordinance 02304-27, waiving the tap fees on behalf of Habitat for Humanity. And Superintendent David Kellogg.
Good evening, Mayor Brown, council. This is an ordinance waiving the tap fees for the water and sewer for Padford Place. It's the first 2 lots of a 9-lot subdivision Habitat for Humanity's doing.
Second.
Motion to approve by Councilman Fan, second by Councilman Hayes. Any questions? All right, all in favor of moving it along to council, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Does pass unanimously, and we'll vote on it next week. Thank you much, Mr. Kellogg. Thank you so much, Mr. LaJoy. You may leave now. Item number 6, now 2, is Resolution R2302-21 and Resolution R2302-22, appointing Stan Carver to the Gallatin IDB and HEHFB boards. And Mr. Fenton.
Also, yes, you'll recall recently you voted to expand the boards from 7 to 9 so that we wouldn't have a trouble with having a quorum. And these are the 2 appointments to fill those spaces that you had voted to expand the board to.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Hayes, second by Vice Mayor Love. Mr. Carver has served in some other capacities within our city and is well familiar with these boards, and certainly with the city of Gallatin, and he is a strong proponent for our city. Any questions, any discussion? Okay, this is Resolution R2302-21 and -22. All in favor of moving along to council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Moves along.
Thank you.
Unanimously. Wait, we got item 7, too. No, we didn't mention that one. I thought you were talking about the IDB and HEHFB. That's one I thought you meant by saying
Okay,
both.
yes.
So, but this is Resolution 23 and 24. It's appointing Jesse Manis to the IDB and the HEHFB boards. I don't know if you want to share any information about Mr. Manis. I don't think many,
I think his information is in your packet there if you really want.
I've known him for a long time, I can tell you that, so.
No, we're just excited to have the boards full so we can make sure they're able to.
He does
stay
have
on.
good industrial experience, too, so that's valuable to us.
Motion to send it on.
Motion by Councilman Hayes.
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Love. Any questions? Okay, Resolution R2302-23 and R2302-24. All in favor of moving on to council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay. we'll
Thank you.
See it next week. Now let's go back to item number 1, which is ordinance 02304-28, adopting Plan Gallatin. Mr. McCord, city planner, is here, but here to present this is Matt Harris from the Gallatin Planning Commission.
Evening, council. Thanks for letting me come talk tonight. Kind of refresh memories. Planning Commission, a little more than a year ago, adopted the Plan Gallatin as the comprehensive growth plan for the city. And subsequently, I made a presentation to the council of Plan Gallatin, asking for council to review and adopt the plan. After a few conversations, council asked the Planning Commission to go back and consider 3 changes to the plan. The little summary on those. The first was some language in the South Water Corridor, removing a reference to blight. Second one was the addition of a overlay area in the Odom's Bend area to encourage future redevelopment of a mixed-use commercial residential type area, just as long-range planning. And then the third was to take a second look at the Lock 4 area and consider changing it or what it would need to change to go from the rural area back to a suburban designation. So I'm going to focus on the 3 changes that council really asked us to look at. And what's on the screen now is the character areas as they were approved. There's really 5. There's a downtown core area, which focus on real high density development. The general urban, which is a little less dense, but still very dense. That's much more the suburban character area, which is more what you think of with residential neighborhoods, and then the rural countryside, which is obviously even less, and then that conservative area. The Lock 4 character area is shown here in the green, and we now have a fancy pointer. There it is, right there. So this is the area that I'm talking about in the Lock 4 area, and that was designated to be the rural residential type area with a maximum density of 2 units per acre. The Planning Commission discussed it over the course of several meetings, and ultimately with a 2 to 5 vote, adopted a change to the plan to return it back to a more suburban designation, which is a density that's more residential with more of a 2 to 5 unit per acre. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. A little history on the area. This is going back to before Plan Gallatin, the long-range planning document that had been adopted by the Planning Commission was Gallatin on the Move 2020. And again, this is, the same area down the Lock 4 Peninsula. And back at that time, it was designated as emerging walkable community. And in the areas that you see in the yellow were a density in that 3 to 5 units per acre range. The orange in the core actually allowed for density up to 8 units per acre. So this is going back to the Gallatin on the Move 2020. I'll get my clicker to work. Prior to that plan, this is the plan that was adopted all the way back in 1996. Same area. So this area down in here, and it was back in 1996 was called low density residential and called for a long range plan, a density of 5 to 8 units per acre. So again, this is kind of the plan as it sits today. Talk a little bit about some of these areas and what these core areas mean. One thing I think I would mention is in past comprehensive growth plans, we had areas that included numerous different designations. So back in 1996, there were 16 different density areas identified. The Gallatin on the Move 2020, Bill may know more than I do, I think it was 10 or 12 different areas that were identified. Was it 19? But it was actually 19 areas. So in the Plan Gallatin document, it's 5 areas, but the thing I want to point out is in each of the areas, if you look at this community character area and the uses, you'll see kind of this top. It talks about land use, and you'll notice starting off with something that's a little less dense, all the way winding up at really dense. Same thing with transportation and the open space. One thing you'll see here too is you'll notice like this is a 1 dot. Over here, this picture is 2 dots, and this has 3 dots. And that correlates down to this density key in the plan. So while Plan Gallatin identifies 5 core areas, each one of the areas has 3 different densities, if you will. So in that downtown core, gives guidance for, up to 40, I think it's 44. Up to 44 units per acre on the low end, with on the higher end, 65 to 100 units per acre. So if you think about a downtown area with a high rise, really, really dense type development. The general urban area is kind of that less dense area, and it has a range of anywhere from 13 to 15 units per acre. So getting out still more dense, closer to the city. And the one that's we're talking about the most tonight really is the suburban area. This is the character area that is most like what the Lock 4 area was really for the past 25 years. And in that density key, when you go down to the bottom here, you'll see it's on the low end of 2 to 3 units per acre. On the high end, on the middle is 3 to 4, and on the high end, 4 to 5 units per acre. And so, as Planning Commission talked about it, this essentially is returning to what has been the policy for the past 25 years, but actually at a lower maximum density per acre. So the Gallatin on the Move was up to 8 units per acre. This caps at a maximum of 5. And even then, that would require open space requirements and an approval. It doesn't guarantee a 5 units per acre. So plan comes through Planning Commission, ultimately the council. It could be kept to the 2 units per acre, which was also allowed in the rural area. So So kind of get on to the next item. The Odom's Bend area was the second thing we were asked to take a look at. And essentially that's this little spot right here that's now labeled item number 10. And so essentially this is the area at the end of Highway 109, right as you're about to cross the bridge. If you're going to Lebanon, it would be on your left down that little inlet. The idea was providing an overlay that's job is to give guidance or long-term for a planning vision that, sometime in the next 20 years, it'd be nice to see that redeveloped and to be a good spot for a mixed-use commercial type project that could have take advantage of the waterfront and be a gathering place. So there's not anything real specific on that, other than the plans identifying a long-range idea. If somebody sees it, we're encouraging them to bring us something to the table to talk about. That's really what its purpose is. And then finally, the mixed-use area, and it's hard to see here. This is the reference to the character area down on South Water, and you can't really see it, but that's where there was a reference to blight in the South Water area, and it was requested that we remove that reference and reword it, and so that's essentially what happened there. So that's it. So that really is the summary of the 3 changes that were made to the plan. So the Planning Commission did adopt the plan as revised, and is now bringing it to the council and asking for consideration for this body to adopt it so that we have a unified planning document for both bodies to work from.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Harris or any discussion you'd like to have on this? And if the will of the body is to move it forward to council, I'd appreciate that as well.
Ma'am, I'm kind of surprised that nobody had questions, but I have some. I think that style is not a joke. If you read page 9, I say that basically the plan related to land use decision become effective pursuant to guidance in Chapter 8 of his document. All of the sections of the plan are intended as a guide and only for planning purpose. But Chapter 8, if I'm reading well, become the law of the land. Chapter 8 is the character area. So what I want to know, and probably gonna go to Susan on that, is that will that become a binding legal document? Because if that's the case, how are we gonna be handling it? We go from lower to higher, but again, if it's a binding document, developer arrive and say, I want to build 5 units an acre, that's what say there, that's it, we're stuck. And we can,
Document does not give people zoning. That's what the character areas are about. It doesn't bind us to make determinations that allow for the maximum associated with any character area. In fact, we talked about at the Planning Commission that over in the future that we might look at going back and dialing down some of the expectations based on the area that they're in and the proximity to the core.
but that's why I'm asking that question, because if it's becoming a binding legal document, how are we gonna do that?
It does not bind you to give them the right to develop based on the maximum in the character area. What it does do, what is binding, is if you were to change the character area on an existing space, the Planning Commission would have to do that to make it consistent with the, what the planning document does is make sure that we are consistent with the planning document. It does not give anybody zoning rights within it. Now, Ms. Hamacali may wish to weigh in too, but, I mean,
I concur with that. It is binding as to the character area, but that can, I say it's binding, it can be changed, but what you're doing right now is you're saying this is the character area, and the zoning would be appropriate for the minimum to the maximum, but it does not give zoning. So zoning would still go before planning and then before this body.
So let's see, developer arrive, he say, I'm gonna build in Log 4 down there where it's a 5 per the character area, it's 5 maximum per acre. And he's gonna come and ask for R8, who's giving him basically per the zoning possibility to request higher density. So if we approve the zoning for higher density, we're going to be back on the same situation we had with Griffin, where we're not going to be able to say you're going to limit at 5
If
because
you approve the zoning, but that's what I'm saying, this doesn't give zoning rights. This doesn't give them the
I
zoning rights.
understand that, but
But yes, if you
the wording say, when the general plan is adopted by the council, all land use decision shall be consistent with the plan.
That's,
that's
So-
accurate.
But that's my question. If we
Shall be consistent means it could be on the low to the high end. It can be anywhere in there. And there are different zonings that would be appropriate in the character areas.
So that means that on the suburban area right there, we're not going to be able to give zoning who authorize more than 5 units per acre.
Right. That's correct. Because the zoning would go with your character area.
you went more dense, you would have to change the character area, and that would have to go through both planning and council. If the council adopts this plan. The issue in the past has been that this body hasn't adopted that plan, and so we weren't required to change, big.
And to add a point of things where in the past, the body didn't adopt the plan because past planning commissions chose not to bring it to the council and ask them to adopt it. So I think that's one of the disconnects that's trying to be changed. Remedied now, is that in the past, there was a disconnect because the planning commission didn't bring it to council.
I want to make sure we're on the same page there of what I just heard, okay? So that, we go back to the farm, to the green farm, it's 5 units maximum per acre. If they come and request a zoning will allow for more than 5 units per acre, we're not going to give them that zoning.
Unless you change the character area.
Unless and change the
that
character
accurate,
area.
Mr. McCord?
Where-
The Griffin's entitlement was based on their zoning, not
Yeah,
by the
no,
character
but
area.
I want to
So-
make sure.
I'll speak to that just briefly from the planning commission's side of it. So the planning document, so if someone's bringing a project to the planning department, planning commission that's zoned, an agriculture or say an R40 district, it's in a suburban area that allows 2 to 5 units per acre, and they were to request an R6, PUD that put 8 units per acre across the property, then in order for that to get approved and for the zoning to change, it would first require a change of Plan Gallatin updating the density to the general urban, which would then have to come to city council for city council, if they adopt the plan, to change that area to approve the higher density. And then it would have to go all the way back through the process of planning commission again. So the first step would be changing the plan to allow the higher density. So in effect, what you're doing by the character areas is you're making it more difficult to exceed that maximum density by adding extra steps to it. So it makes it more difficult. However, if a project comes to planning commission and is asking for the maximum density, but that's not desired in that area for whatever reason, the planning commission could say, hey, the most we're going to allow is R20 and limit you to 2 to 2.5 units per acre for whatever the reason happens to be. And that would be consistent with the planning document.
I think a lot goes into that. I mean, adjacent developments, road infrastructure, what their plans are for road infrastructure.
There possibly, that also depends on whether they already have their zoning. Not like the Griffin, they already have their zoning.
No, but I was mentioning the
You're
Griffin
talking about if
because-
someone's asking for a future rezone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh,
Be consistent with the character area. Mr. McCord, do you agree with that? Make sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah, those people and then we've got situations like that now where their zoning gives you more entitlements, if you will, than the character area or land use would assign to you. Those people are grandfathered in and they have the rights to develop under that zoning, even though it's inconsistent with the comp plan. So those things will continue to exist. We'll probably try to opportunities to maybe clean those up administratively if we can get cooperation. But as far as the council, tying their hands and restricting their authority or power, this does not do that. Adopting this plan does not do this. If you want to adopt a zoning that creates twice the density of the recommendations of the comp plan, you can do so. That might not be a wise choice. You might have some real big problems with that if you adopt it as policy. but there's nothing to keep you from doing that either.
That,
So
Well, you would need to change the character area.
Yeah.
should change the character, but if you
That would be
adopted a
my
zoning that was
advice.
inconsistent with the comp plan, that would possibly open you up to legal concerns. So,
that's where I was going to, that talking about legal binding.
but you have that authority now, you see. You have that authority now.
It would be my advice as the city attorney that if someone's asking for a rezone that is not consistent with the character area, my advice would be you need to change that character area.
Right.
That would be my advice.
And we would not, as staff, and I doubt the planning commission would make a recommendation to the council to adopt the zoning inconsistent with the comp plan.
Yeah, and if you go back and look at past years when Gallatin on the Move 2020 was the long-range plan, there were several instances that I recall where developments were requested in areas that made sense in the area, but were inconsistent with the character area from Gallatin Move 2020, just as time changed. And the first step in those processes was the Planning Commission first made a determination to change Gallatin on the Move 2020 to amend the plan to reflect the character area before recommending the zoning change. So the policy or the procedure of the Planning Commission has been to first amend the plan and to make that evaluation before going to the discussion on the zoning issue. So I think the key takeaway is it does add an extra step in that requires much more scrutiny to the process. And with amending to Plan Gallatin, that comes with a much longer process, more public comment and input to do it. So while Mr. McCord's correct, legally, would you have to do it? Perhaps no. The city attorney would tell us yes.
It's been our practice.
It's been our practice. So I would say from a planning commission standpoint, we would not recommend a zoning change without changing the plan.
That's happened, most notably Nexus, Tennessee property, Facebook property. Those went through land use or character area changes to accommodate a zoning change that would allow them to develop what they've done. So Gallatin on the Move plan was in effect for 12, 13 years. And in the course of that, there were probably a dozen or so character area changes and/or text amendments to the plan at that time to accommodate growth that's been occurring in the city. And they anticipated that. And this plan is going to anticipate that too. We're going to have other changes. Mr. Fenton has mentioned that we're quite low on industrial land. We're likely to have character area changes that expand and identify additional industrial areas. So this plan is dynamic. It's not a set plan that you don't touch for 20 years or 25 years.
Not law. I said it's not law.
No, it's not.
It's not law.
Well, it would be if you adopted as an ordinance, and that's what we're asking y'all to do.
Well, no. I'm saying it's not what I'm trying to say is it's not entitling people with their character areas and something that we cannot change without.
Right, you have the control over
Right.
that. And if you adopt it as ordinance, not only does the planning commission then make recommendations to it, y'all are the final say in what the character area becomes, and/or other policies and actions in the plan.
So I got a simple question. I got Matt, either one of y'all. I brought this up the other night, I just want to make sure. The property we were talking about annexing, Block 4 the other night. If this gets approved, suburban, whatever, that we still have control over the zoning for that area, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, this does nothing to grant any vested right.
We don't have to say, if he comes in and says we want to put 800 units on 130 acres, we do not have to do that. We can say, no, you're going to go 2 units per acre, whatever.
You couldn't keep them at 1 unit per acre because that would only be consistent with rural and we're changing the character.
Yeah, essentially, to go less than 2 units per acre would require the same process on the lower scales. You would go through a process of amending the document.
That's what I'm saying. If you went to 1, you would have to
You'd have to
change it.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is.
But if you kept it at 2 or.
Yeah, if for whatever reason, whether it's traffic studies, whether it's adjacent properties, for whatever reason the determination is made, if the determination is, 2.5 units per acre and that zoning that's appropriate, then that would be within the authority of the Planning Commission and the council to say that's what's allowed here. So it's within the range of 2 to 5.
Thank you.
Bill, I have one more question for you, please. You have been really adamant about changing that green to suburban, but we had heated conversation on that, you and me, and I appreciate your input every time, but a few times during meetings, you said that there were parts on that map that you didn't like. You actually liked the change of suburban, but there were parts you didn't like. And I would appreciate if you letting me know the parts you will change you didn't like on that plan too.
This was a large area that was changed near the end of the whole process going through the Planning Commission at kind of like the last minute. There are other areas basically on the periphery of the city, and some in the city limits and some out of the city limits that were assigned a different character area than what was recommended by the consultant, and which went through the public process and was introduced and was part of all those comments and all those community meetings that we had both before and after, during COVID. You may remember we struggled quite a bit during the COVID process trying to innovate how to encourage public participation. Given that this was kind of the first time out on doing that, I think we did a noble job of doing that. So the character area map does not necessarily reflect the results of all of the public comments. And yes, I think there are certain areas that may have been assigned a certain character area that might not be appropriate or consistent with that initial map prepared by the consultants, and those areas need to be looked at as well. So as I was directed primarily by this council to look at that south central portion, as I'll call it, as well as some the Bulls Creek Basin and that particular text change in the South Water Corridor focused on that. Now, if this body wants to, and or the Planning Commission wants to initiate actions on other character area changes or policy or action changes, I'll be glad to pursue those.
Thank you, Mr. McCord. Anyone else with any questions, comments, discussion? Is there a motion?
Voting for this, we're agreeing with the changes.
You are agreeing to adopt the plan as it is.
I will say that I was on planning when we first came up with this. We did a lot of work, spent many, many weeks on it. I personally thought it was great to have that Lot 4 area as rural. I will not vote for I won't vote for the high end of that for sure. I would hope that they would keep it at those smaller amount of two to whatever.
2 is the minimum,
lower.
5 is the maximum.
Yep. So I'm fine with everything except that, but I don't want to hold it all back since planning and has already come through and voted. But I was happy with it being rural, and I wish that they had left it that way, but they didn't.
Motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Motion by Councilman Hayes.
Okay.
Second by Councilman Fan. Any further discussion? All in favor of moving ordinance 02304-28 on to council, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It does pass unanimously. Let's move now down to item number 3, which is Resolution R2304-34. And Charles is with us tonight. You might wish to reintroduce yourself to the council.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you, council. Name's Charles Gavian. I'm the Assistant City Engineer over capital improvements. If y'all don't mind, I'd like to combine items 3, 4, and 5. All these items entail street acceptance for Foxen Crossing Phase 12B, Foxen Crossing Phase 14, and Carrollton Phase 4.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Hayes, second by Vice Mayor Love. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor of sending items 3? Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. The question we never been asked is that we accept all these roads, but how much is it going to cost at one point? Because with the growth we have, everything's going to come at the same point, and we're going to have to take care of all these roads. We never have a cost. So, and if I remember last week, in one of the annexation report, there is a comment that the repair would actually cost the city money per unit. So I'm still looking into it because I want to know. I think we're taking too much obligation, and I don't know if there's a way to do it different or make some fees happen or something, but I'm going to abstain on that one.
The way to do it differently is to approve on the front end private streets. When they are public streets, the city has an obligation with the development to accept that street when it reaches the required criteria. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to that, but we can't go back and say, oh, you've done everything that we said, that you said you would do when we agreed that it would be a public street once the development was complete, and then all of a sudden decide that we're not going to service it.
I understand, ma'am, but maybe it's time to start to look at the number and see if, we should maybe tell these people that it's going to be private street now. I'm just wondering, again.
Well, there are parameters, I think, too, on what can be, or what engineering would say would be a proper private street. With private streets, we also don't provide trash service and.
Yeah, my understanding is all these streets have been approved by our inspectors, signed off on our inspectors, and then it does go through the planning commission as well.
I don't feel like we have a choice at this point. I mean, in the future, if something makes sense and you think a development would work as a private street development, which is typically like condos and the like, kind of, I mean, I don't know where Mr. McCord, do you have something you want to say?
I don't know either. That's why I'm asking.
Yes, ma'am. I want to remind y'all that I reported to you last week that, and that's part of the annexation study, we start doing that. We've kind of nailed it down to a specific cost it would be at the time that we resurface these streets. So depending on these streets, it's going to be 10 years or even more before they have to be resurfaced at the city's expense. Of course, we'll be collecting tax revenues over many years to take care of that cost. But once you get above, below 1.5 units per acre, or even maybe 2 units per acre, it's not cost feasible for the city in the long run to do that. So this is another reason that we don't want too low of density, because it's not paying for itself, particularly when it relates to streets. The same thing would apply to replacement of other types of utilities.
That's always a hot topic at planning trainings, because your cost of infrastructure spread over lower density developments is a lot more expensive than it is over higher density developments.
Just think if you have a 50 feet of frontage for a lot versus
Right.
200 feet of frontage,
Right.
that's 4 times that you have to pay for with one home to do it.
Well, and not just the streets, the
But
replacement of
every
utility
other
infrastructure.
utility,
And
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, a motion, a second. All in favor of sending Resolution R2304-34, -35, and -36 on to council, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
Abstain?
Have 5 yeses, 1 abstention, equaling 6, correct? I want to make sure I'm right with one not here. Okay, oh, good. So now we get to move on to the budget. So I didn't know how far I would get on the budget proposal, and so I have a pretty full budget proposal for you, and I'm excited about that. I'm going to go ahead and pass out the PowerPoint. I hope that you will follow along in my presentation, though, and not be jumping ahead trying to figure out what's there, because I think that will be distracting to you. Pass 3 down here. One for me. I'll just. I guess after I do the presentation, Rachel, we can hand those out. Rachel actually has the full budgets, and she will hand those out to both the department heads and the council when we are finished with the presentation. So I'm going to walk you through the presentation. It's going to give you kind of the high-level information, and then you can go through the budget detail between now and future meetings to see, what concerns you may have. But right now, this is the budget presentation. Your printout does follow along if you can't see the screen very well. So I just wanted to kind of look back at kind of what our sales tax revenues have been. You can see back in 2018, we were at 5.6 million. State shared was at 1.9. You look at 23, we're now at almost 8. We will be actually past 8.8 and at 3 point probably 1 something, because this year compared to years past, February is not in this calculation because I'm apparently presenting it a little earlier than we have in years past. So February is not in that calculation, so our numbers will look very good this year. We'll look at the sales tax numbers. This is just showing you again compared to 2018 when we had almost 5. We are now at almost 7 on our property tax revenue. So Mr. Mayberry always used to ask, what does 1 penny on the property tax rate bring into the city? Gosh, back when I started, it was probably in the $80,000 range. Now it brings in $177,000 per penny into our coffers. So the budget that was requested this year was just over $66 million. The budget that I'm presenting to you today is $52,411,813. That also has $11,383,729 in our rainy day fund, and maintains an additional reserve for us of $10,506,248. Come on now. Stay with me. Uh-oh. I can come over there. Did you do that? Let me see. Okay. We'll see. Hang tight. Let's see if we can get the next one. So we'll look first at the general fund. And so the operating revenue, the money that's coming in to support our operating expenses, is $49,142,138. Our operating expenditures as budgeted are $45,467,119. That leaves us a remaining $3,675,019 to spend on capital. What I have budgeted for capital exceeds that, and so I'm asking that we take $2.8 million from our reserve funds to cover the additional capital that I would like to fund in this year's budget. So, yeah, I'm gonna need you to move it for me, Jim. So this just gives you a fund balance detail because I'm asking to take money from our reserve funds. Per our audit last year, we did have $42,545,66 total surplus, which is money. That just means money that was not in the budget. There is money programmed within that. Take out the carryover projects from 2022. That was $3.2 million. We did quite a bit in mid-year appropriations, including the $2 million for Clearview Park, $5.5 million. Our rainy day fund, as I mentioned before, for 24 is going to be 11.4. Take out the surplus that I want to spend on capital this year. That's almost $9 million. We have obligations of about $9 million. Most of that's for road. There's a little bit other that I'm figuring for some other expenditures that will be required of us. And so our projected total balance will be at $10,506,248, which is a strong additional reserve that we have here in the city. Okay, so this looks back again at what I was talking about Our operating revenue, our operating expenditures, what that leaves us for capital expenditures, the additional that I want to take from the reserve funds to fund capital expenditures for a total capital expenditure of $6.944,694. There are several items that were requested in the budget that are not funded in the budget, but they are funded because Rachel worked to identify some bond funds that had not been spent. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to get some water. My throat is too dry to do all this talking. So Smith Street is $1 million that can be funded from old bond dollars. The engineering office improvements, that's for the accommodation of the traffic operations, and then the citywide sidewalks. The engineering office was something that they had requested. The sidewalks was a little more than $700,000. And then I've also put, because we do have a tourism balance that we have not spent any money from, I'm suggesting that we take $400,000 from that to fund park improvements that can be related to ball tournaments that could come from tourism. Now, they aren't designated in the budget. In fact, I want to tell you, when you look at the Parks and Recreation budget, that you'll see some dollars in there for bleachers. I'm sorry. You'll see money in there for bleachers. You'll see money in there for shade structures. You'll see money in there for ball field lights. I am not married to any of those locations. I really think that we need to make those decisions once we get our park plan back from those who are developing it. But I did want to program some money in there to be funded with revenue, and then I'm adding or asking for this additional $400,000 for investment in our parks facilities when we do get that plan back. But you'll see, like, I kind of just randomly programmed, like, something in Thompson, something in Municipal, something in Triple Creek, something in Clearview, but we need to reprioritize. I know that the bleachers in Clearview are the bleachers that are most needed. Beyond that, I don't know which lights are the highest priority, and so we'll need to figure those things out as we navigate the parks plan. This is taking a look at the utilities budget. On our water and sewer, we're showing a revenue of $20,440,000, expenses of $19,900. On gas, the revenue's at $23,377,420, with expenses of $22,354,162. They do have some reserve funds that they want to spend down, and that's why the expense there is exceeding the revenue. In stormwater, the revenue's at $1,950,000 with expenses of $3,737,648. This is one budget line that we have to explore a bit more. They don't quite have that amount in reserve funding, but Rachel feels that with the project request there will actually exist over a longer period of time, and so we don't necessarily need to fund that full expense in this year's budget. At environmental, we have a revenue of $305,500 with expenses of $3.4 million. They do have plenty of surplus there to fund that. So that's just kind of a look at the utilities, all supported by, essentially ratepayers. Going over to just give you an update on where we are with our general obligation bonds, our debt. The 2024 payment that will be due is $2,681,600. Our principal balance is $24,355,000. Our interest balance is $5,602,781. Talking about community enhancement requests, we actually had requests totaling $348,200, and I have put in the budget. You can move ahead, Jeff. I have put in the budget, well, I'll run through these really quickly and tell you what our total funding was, because there are a couple in here that are going to be a little odd to you. We did have, just as a reminder, we use a community enhancement committee. For that, we use at least one community member, several city employees, and any council member that wishes to participate. So CASA is the court-appointed special advocates. You'll see what they requested this year and that we are funding their request in full. Community Life Bridge is largely about doing senior ride. They requested $15,000. The committee asked to allocate exactly what we had allocated last year, which was $5,000. Cumberland Crisis Pregnancy Center asked for $3,000, which was a $1,000 increase over last year, which we funded. Decisions, Choices, and Options was funded $2,000 last year. They requested $4,000 this year. The committee funded them also at $3,000. DCO and Cumberland Crisis Pregnancy are very similar organizations, and so we felt like giving the same amount to both was a very fair thing to do. Recovery Court of Sumner County, I must say that this is one that came to us and asked for money and said they could ask for more from this committee because they were so impressed with the work that they're doing, and they requested $5,000, a first-time recipient, and they did allocate those funds. The Gallatin Chamber of Commerce requested an increase of $20,000. They were kept at the $40,000 that they have received previously. The Gallatin Child Care Center is consistent at $10,000 as they have been getting for a few years. Same for Gallatin Daycare at $16,000. That formula is based on a per child formula, and that's how they figure that. The library is the one disappointing thing in this budget. They did not request funding from the city. We are still trying to explore whether or not we are obligated to provide that, even though they did not request it. If we are, that money has been placed in the budget so that we are not short. The Gallatin Senior Center, they requested $27,000 this year compared to $23,000 that they received last year. The committee decided to fund them at $15,000. I think the feeling was that some of their services had been reduced. Hats requested $3,000. They did not request last year, though they have in years past. The committee's selected to give them $1,000. Historic Downtown Gallatin requested $35,000 and was allocated $30,000 as they were last year. The July 4th celebration, that's actually doesn't go through the committee. That's just basically the cost of fireworks, $25,600, and you can change the slide, Jeff. The Rosemont Restoration Foundation, we've kept at $20,000 as they have been for several years. Salva Center at $6,000 as they have been for several years. Shalom Zone did not request funds this year. The Health Department, we are obligated to. They will receive $11,000 as they have for many years. The Museum Association requested an increase. The committee did fund that, so they will receive $25,000 versus $22,500 last year. The Sumner Prevention Coalition received $4,000 last year. They requested $4,000 this year. The committee voted to give them $2,000. There was actually a request for something that they felt was a duplication of services by other agencies, and so they didn't feel like that this committee should fund that. The Sumner Spay and Neuter Alliance requested $6,100 compared to the $4,970 they received last year. The committee funded $5,000. STARS is a program through the school system. It receives a lot of dollars from higher up government levels. They have a very healthy fund balance. They requested some money from the city. The committee did not feel like that was necessarily something we need to fund at a city level. The Tennessee Small Business Development Center requested $7,500. The committee allocated $6,500 as they have received in years past. Trousdale Place requested $30,000. They received $6,000 last year. They have some foundation repair work that needs doing. Obviously, we do want to preserve that property. However, the committee felt like there should be some other opportunities out there to receive some grants to support the historic property. So the committee allocated $7,500. And then finally, Unlimited Potential, they actually came in with two different budget requests, one for their summer program and one for their Stay Warm shelter. The total request was $25,000. Last year, they received $7,000. And the recommended allocation this year is $12,000. So the initial request was $348,200. Last year we funded, I can't see that, $298,970, I think that says, and $288,600 is what we are recommending this year in the budget. So I just read those numbers so you can move along. So the total budget, this is the general fund budget, 24 versus 23. 24 was 52,411, 24 is 52,411, 813 compared to 23, which was 49,879, 580. It's a 5.08% increase or $2.5 million. Next slide, please. So revenue versus expenditures, this is pretty much what I showed you before, just where the deficiency is to fund the capital. Total capital expenditure right at $7 million. Move along. The total city budget, just for your information, including the utilities, is $102,207,002. That's $89 million in operating expenses, $96 million in revenue coming in, and then capital expenditures. I did not correct that slide. That was the slide that I was supposed to correct, Miss Rachel, and I can't remember what that number was. I thought I corrected it, but I must not have saved it before I sent. Do you remember what the number was? That was that capital number is just for the general fund. It was a larger number, obviously, for the whole city capital, but we'll get that number at some point and tell it to you. You can move along. I just wanted to mention, we did get a pretty big hit. Well, 2 hits. One I don't really have in here. One, I don't think we're going to see the state restore any of the sales tax that we were hot on the request for. We thought we had a really good chance this year, but because of the funding, rightly so, that they are now dedicating to securing schools. That is a high impact to the state budget, and so we don't feel like we as cities are going to get it coming back to us. And so that was some revenue that we had wanted to anticipate, and we can't really anticipate at this point. But this impact actually took quite a bit of money away from us. And I've explained this to you before, but I'm going to try and explain it again where it makes sense. Because Sumner County only does appraisals every 5 years, between years 2 and 5, the state comptroller's office basically reduces down personal property and utilities relative to what they feel that residential property is underappraised or overappraised. So the ratio for revaluations that the state determined this year essentially said that our residential properties were undervalued, I guess, 39%. Therefore, we can only get back 61% of what we would typically receive in both personal properties and our utilities payment in lieu of taxes. So that costs our budget, costs our revenue, deficits our revenue $971,622 compared to what we had initially anticipated. It's a really serious hit for our budget. I have talked to the county for years about looking at doing an every other year appraisal cycle, which would stop us from having this hit, and I think would benefit all the cities in Sumner County, but certainly those of us who have a large industrial presence, mainly Portland and Gallatin. So that's my, just the information on that. We did have a lot of reclassification requests this year. I have included them all in the budget. I think they are all legitimate and I can support them. The reclassification requests include administrative assistants at the police department from 1 to 2, the police officer trainee, but getting a higher scale once they complete some of their training. In codes, it moves an inspector from 4 to 5 and one from 2 to 4 based on certifications that they have received. In HR, it takes an HR assistant to an associate, and then an HR associate slash receptionist to an associate. In Public Works, and that's a part-time position. Over at Public Works, there's a general laborer 1 to general laborer 2, a laborer 1 to general laborer 2. A facility maintenance mechanic from 2 to 3, a mechanic 1 to a mechanic 3, a mechanic 2 to a mechanic 3, and another mechanic 2 to a mechanic 3. They are in different areas, which is why their classifications are different, or their steps. And there's also administrative assistant 5 to the public works coordinator position. And then the general labor custodian would become a facility maintenance mechanic. At public utilities, a gas line welder to a gas distribution technician. Moving on to the new position request, what I have included in this budget are 3 firefighter EMTs, a fire records coordinator. Not really fond of having to do that. It is a part-time position, but we feel like it's really important because we need to be compliant on our medical records, and that is not something that we have a person in place to take care of. Added a planning assistant, an administrative assistant 3 at GPU, a supervisor over there, and 2 customer service clerks, also a GIS tech, and I'm very excited about this addition. This is something that we've talked about for years, a staff engineer for GPU. At Public Works, a recycle laborer, and an HR, a clerk temporary, which is actually being worked at this point, but has not been properly put in the budget. It's been there because of openings. Not supported in this budget is the Assistant Director of Codes, a Traffic Signal Control Technician 2, a second one temporary, the Internal Auditor, and the Parks and Athletics Groundskeeper. So those are what I have done with the positions. And, open to discussion or feedback. By the way, council, department heads have not seen this budget until now. Years past, they have seen it prior to the presentation to you all, but we did not do that that way this year. Talking about the cost of living increase, because that's been something that people have been very concerned about. There's actually multiple facets that I'm looking at that I have included in this year's budget. The first would be our longevity payment. In the past, we have had a scale based on how long people have been here, where they got X amount per year, and the people that had been here longer got more per year. And then we also did service awards each year, where employees would be recognized with gift cards at those 5, 10, kind of those special years of service. So what we're proposing is to do away with the service awards and change the longevity awards so that any employee that has been here 3 years or longer will receive a longevity payment annually equal to $100 per year. The impact of that to our budget is $290,000. We also are proposing to change how we do holiday pay. Typically, we have done holiday pay in a way that those employees working holidays could take the holiday in the month before, during, or after the holiday. We're going to do away with that and just pay straight up for holidays. And so that impact is $45,000. And then I'm also proposing an increase, not a traditional COLA in a percentage way, but what I'm proposing is that we do an increase for all employees of $1 per hour. What that does is it helps those employees where to me, it helps make us more attractive in those lower wage positions where we have such challenges filling those positions. And then it doesn't impact the city financially as much, or really, I think, hurt us in a way where we do attract plenty of employees, which is in those higher wage roles. So just to kind of give you an idea what that looks like, if someone's making $40,000 a year, that equates to about a 5% increase. If they are making $100,000 a year, that's about a 2% increase. If they're making less than 40, it's going to be more than 5. If they're making more than 100, it's going to be less than 2. Over the years, I've always struggled with how to do this so that we can have the impact where it is needed most without costing the city money that is beyond our ability to afford. And so when you look back what we have done over the last several years between bonuses and hazard pay and the pay study, I feel very good about what we have done thus far with paying our employees. So that is what I'm proposing on the increase for employees. I think that's 3 good impacts. Certainly some employees will be more significantly impacted, those who work on a longer hour week, those who work on holidays, and those who have been here for shorter periods of time but will still get longevity service payment. Just a reminder, looking back, capital total, $6.9 million. taken $2.9 million from our reserve funds, operating revenue of 49 million, operating expenditures of 45 point almost 5, and expenditures from our revenue for capital of 3 point almost 7. So I think that might be the last slide. That's the total city budget. There's the right number. I knew I had it in there somewhere, Rachel. Okay, it's 13,184,694 as the total citywide capital expenditure. So that is in there, and that is right. And so, yay. You can tear that other page out or put a big X through it. So those are the correct numbers. And that is it. Or for any questions. With this body's permission, we can start taking this through the process for readings. Of course, I didn't mention, but I guess it's a given that that doesn't change our property tax rate. So the property tax rate has to go through 3 readings. So if you all are supportive, we can start that going through next week. Likewise with the budget. The budget goes through 2 readings, so. And like I said, the department heads hadn't seen it till now. So as they look through it, if they identify anything that I really messed up, then we can, make changes as we go through the approval process, if everybody is supportive of that.
Paige, when will you find out about the library?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm leaving it in there for now so that it's there if we have to fund it, but.
You know why the Trousdale Place asked for such a large increase?
They are being forced to make some serious foundation repairs. For many years, that organization was taken care of by the Daughters of American Revolution, none of whom. Daughters of Confederacy. Okay, the UDC. Many years it was taken care of by them. It was turned over to local group. And I think they really are trying to pay attention to preserving the property, preserving the building. They have been working on a lot of site failures, but also foundation failure. And so now they recognize that this has to be done to preserve that home, and they ask us for some money to help do that. I think that there is probably some money out there that they can access through some grants, but I certainly agree with them that we don't want anything to happen to the house.
I just wonder why.
That's why. So. Any other questions, comments?
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot to absorb too.
Take you about 15 minutes. That budget take you about 15 minutes.
I want this council and I want the department heads both to know that I appreciate our finance department so very much, and particularly Ms. Nichols. You are amazing and always a tremendous help, and for that I am very grateful. And keeps our city finances in great shape, so.
So it'll be on the agenda for next week.
I'm waiting on somebody to make a motion if they so desire.
No, I mean, I'm sure we'll look at it and have questions and everything, but we'll go ahead and put it on the agenda for next week. I'll make a motion we do that.
Motion by Councilman Hayes, second by Councilman Fan. Any further comments? You're welcome to contact me over the week ahead if you have questions, if you have things you want to make sure that I address, or something that doesn't make sense, or, we'll do it. Motion is second. All in favor of moving the budget, and is that for the tax rate as well?
Tax rate also,
Okay,
yeah.
budget and tax rate on to council, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no. Okay, we'll move it on to council next week. Thank you all so much. That is going to conclude the regular agenda and take us now to other business. Couple of things that I want to discuss with you. First of all, I do need to tell you the final candidates for the interview for the human resources, and you are supposed to approve those if you are so willing to. They are, let's see, let me get back to what I sent. Because we are supposed to be interviewing them next week. So I want to share with you that the finalists, with the expert committee reviewed the resumes. They scored the candidates, and the top 4 candidates, because there's quite a bit of separation between any further down. So the top 4 candidates that they're recommending that we interview are Julie, I don't know if it's Reeder or Reuter, Roeder, Courtney Russell, David Strahl, and Jill Russell. And so you should recognize at least one of those names. But we did have quite a few candidates apply, some very strong resumes, lots of good experience, excited to have a very qualified field of applicants from which to choose.
Do we need to move it on?
Please.
Second to move it on?
Well, it's a motion to approve the candidate, the slate of candidates to be interviewed. That's what it would be proper.
So is that what Craig just did?
You just did.
A second.
Okay. Councilwoman George? Okay. Approves the slate of candidates. Second by you, Councilman Hayes? By Vice Mayor Luck. Very good. Okay. Motion is second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay. Those are approved unanimously, and the interview schedules will be.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
We will get the resumes of the candidate. Can we get that?
Yeah, they will get all of that information to you prior to the interviews.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then they will schedule you as you are able. I can't remember if they were supposed to be next Monday or next Tuesday. The next thing I have to ask you all about, and I don't know if you're going to have an answer for me this evening. I actually think it kind of needs some pondering, and Ms. McCauley and Ms. Nichols may also have some thoughts about it. But I have been asked by the United Way if the city would be interested in leasing the chamber building to them once it is vacated by the chamber. So they are currently paying around, I think, $1,800 a month. They're interested in keeping it at $1,800. They're interested in renting it. I told them I felt for sure that we could not give them a long-term commitment, but that we might be able to give them a short-term commitment with some clause that would, give them a 90-day notice or something if we needed to move out. So I do obviously think United Way is a great organization. They serve a lot of people in Gallatin. I'd love to have them in the core of the city, but I don't know if that makes sense for the city of Gallatin or not.
Do we need the space right now or not?
They're in the Hunt Club right now.
Right. Right. And they're,
Do we need to see if we can get more in out of it?
pardon me?
Put it up for bids.
I don't.
Something we've got, Rachel and I will need to talk about.
It's something that, because it was built for, we put it out there as to me, in my mind, entity that was serving the public's purpose. So I feel like it should stay like that. Because originally we allowed the chamber to build a building on city property. And because I guess they were serving the public and the council agreed to that. So now we'll have a building.
I kind of agree with Steve, but we don't need to be losing money on it either.
No. But right now we're getting no money on it. So,
That's why I asked if we needed it. If we don't, then yes, we can lease it out.
That was my question, is do we not need to move something into it with
I
our,
don't think we need to. I think we could, but I don't think we need.
How many square feet's the building?
Oh, maybe 2,500, something like that. 2,500, 2,700. And all the upstairs space is eaves, so it's not good upstairs space. So,
Where are they at now?
United Way, those Hunt Club condominiums down there.
is that how much they pay now?
How many square feet have they got now? I think we need to look into that.
I think they probably have. I think they have more where they are, but regardless,
Sounds like they want the local presence in Gallatin.
Well, and I think they want a more public-facing space, and I think Gallatin is a large part of the population that they serve. with it having been a building housing a nonprofit for a lot of years. We also have another building that we have that houses Ashley's Place, just FYI. We allow them to use that.
Where is it? Who?
Ashley's Place,
Okay.
down below, behind Wendy's. So.
It's something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I love
It's been available for a while yet.
Oh, right. I mean, it's going to be some time before it's available, but ultimately, we are going to have to purchase that building, as we discussed before. But they're trying to make plans as well, and so I told her I would bring it to this council so that you could contemplate it and see what your thoughts are, and if it's the right thing or the wrong thing to do moving forward. I think that is all that I have. Ms. Nichols?
Did have the tax rate ordinance ready to hand out this evening, so I'll pass that out. And department heads, in my hurry to staple things this afternoon, I've stapled HR's report in somebody's batch. If you happen to have Jill's report, would you give it to her, please? I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, that budget just isn't incredibly juicy, so. Okay, is there any other business from this council before we move on to department head reports? Okay, department head reports? Anyone? Mr. McCord, do you want to do something with Healthy Communities?
Yes, last time I was here, I talked briefly about a grant opportunity that just made aware of, and it's the Healthy Built Environment Grant from the Department of Health. It is a grant for either planning up to $50,000 or construction for up to $80,000, and it's essentially to provide facilities, recreation primarily, I would think, that will serve underserved populations and to encourage them to get out and move about and improve their quality of life and their health. There is no matching grant required, no matching funds are not required, so we still need to try to identify what a qualified type of project would be that meets those criteria, though, and we haven't done that yet. But the big ticket item here is, of course, whether we want to pursue a planning type of project or do we want to forge ahead with a capital type project. We have to provide a notification to the state by May 10th that we have an intent to apply. So we don't have to do a whole lot of work until after that date. And once we provide a note of intent, they will evaluate our proposal and then give us a green light, hopefully, to go ahead and submit an application. So we're going to have to do a little bit more work. What we'll probably do between now and the May 10th is bring you a resolution supporting us applying for it, if that's what y'all want us to do.
But to me, if we were going in the direction of planning, that kind of limits us to trails and greenways. I could see an opportunity associated with the property that we have out at Station Camp, like a trail system there, or Langley Hall, a trail system there. But to me, planning is you really just, I mean, since we've got the Parks Master Plan in motion, it's really not, that wouldn't help us with anything. And I can't think of anything else related to healthy communities. Well, I guess that
Yeah, we're gonna have to-
planning related.
Yeah, but we're going to, again, have to focus our efforts on historically underserved populations. So out there at Station Camp might not be the best place for that. I'm not sure about over here, Langley Hall, or I think you mentioned the property we
Main
own.
Street property.
Yeah, near the school, the old school, the football stadium. So we'll need to evaluate
I
those
think
and see which
Municipal
ones.
Park falls in an underserved population, Census District, Clearview, Thompson, and I think Langley Hall does. I think it does. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I think there are
I can
three
look those
census
census blocks
tracts,
up and see.
including downtowns in that
Right.
area. So
Yeah.
we'll have to, put our heads together and come up with something that we think will score and meet those criteria between now and the time that y'all consider a resolution to support.
So
an
if y'all have
application.
any ideas you're fired up about, get with
Yeah,
us.
it'd
And
be
we'll
great
keep-
to get
and
that
they-
out.
And Mr. Brown and Mr. McCord and I will continue to keep working on it. And
Okay.
I just want to say, I think that would be a good opportunity to provide extra additional resources outside of the money that's already been allotted for Clearview Park, Thompson Park, and municipal parks, such as maybe bike racks with bikes that people can return or something.
Good idea.
Yep.
So I think we definitely should pursue that opportunity to help better all the city parks in our area that will qualify.
Okay.
Well,
You mind if I-
think bike racks and think of other things that might be, that's a great idea, though.
If we had the recreation plan, if it was completed, that would really give us, I think, a leg up on this. But we'll do the best we can, and we'll come back with some ideas, and like that idea. It's good.
Thank you.
I think maybe Rosemary in as well.
Rosemary? No. Me with Rosemary? Yeah, we'll get Rosemary involved, too. On another item, we had 3 ordinances recently presented to the council, and at second reading, for whatever reason, I'm not real sure, the conditions of approval of those ordinances, and they were master plans, were not included in the second reading. They were included in the document for first reading, and they were included in the public hearing document that was presented to you. But for whatever reason, they didn't show up in the second reading. So this was, and these weren't really controversial ordinances or projects. The first one was the Goodview Commons project. Remember, they put the car wash in there, and then they have this unusual shaped hotel. Y'all approved that one, both at first reading, and you approved it at second reading, but the conditions weren't attached to it. The other was Enoch Hills Phase 3. Remember, y'all didn't require the street connection, so it didn't have the conditions of approval for whatever reason on there. And the last one was the recreation facility that a private entity wants to build that's on the dirt mound, I call it. That's at the intersection of 386 and Big Station Camp Boulevard. That's kind of surrounded by the railroad tracks and the freeway. Again, didn't have the conditions. So as I talked to Susan, she's investigating what process we need to do to bring that back. Hopefully, it's just to have a second reading that includes those conditions, so.
Can you move that to council?
No, I think that Mr. McCord will put that on the agenda, and during that time, I will get with him and we'll know the process. I think what we will need to do is to put it on the agenda, and then someone would need to make a motion to amend something previously approved. I've talked with a lot of other municipal attorneys and tried to get their advice, and some of them said it's like a scrivener's error and they wouldn't do anything, but I want to make sure that what has gotten approved is accurate. So I think what we'll do is put it on the agenda, have someone make a motion to amend something previously approved to include Exhibit A, which has the conditions of approval. There was not a motion to amend previously. Those conditions weren't deleted. However, I think just for clarity's sake, I think that we should move forward to correct it.
And lastly, TDOT is offering a multimodal access grant, a call for those projects. And that is a 95% and 5% local match request for construction projects that are, again, multimodal. Usually we've used those to build sidewalks and greenways, and they will fund a maximum of $1 million grant, which means that we would pay $50,000 and they'd pay $950,000. So again, just got this information, and we may bring that to you. Probably identify another segment of Greenway Trail, Vol State Gap Trail. We've been trying to piece together with various funding sources, including this funding source. So we may bring another gap or another segment of the Vol State Gap Trail to you for consideration. And that's about it right now.
Anyone else? Department heads? I have one more thing I was supposed to mention to y'all, make sure you don't have an issue with. Saturday, June 23rd, it's the Gallatin Arts Council's Chalk Walk. They are proposing a chalk walk on the square. They hope to recruit professional chalk artists, local and local youth to create chalk art along the sidewalks on the square. Ideally, they would section off sidewalk squares for artists. Chalk drawings would begin between 8 and 9 a.m. and would finish by noon. Youth chalk spaces would be open all day long. No chalk art would happen in front of any doorways, and they will keep space for pedestrian traffic open along the sidewalks. I'm sharing that with you because I'm not feeling like we need to close the streets or close the sidewalks, but I do think that we all need to be aware. Y'all okay with that? Yeah.
Who's putting it together?
The Gallatin Arts Council.
Okay.
Yeah. They've done it, I think they've done, I don't know if they've done it downtown before, but they've done something similar before. It was really neat, so. Okay. Anyone with a motion? Motion to adjourn by Vice Mayor Love, second by Councilwoman George. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a lovely evening. Thank you for listening to the budget presentation.